We're going over Book 1 of the Aeneid, lines 418 through 440. That includes the bee simile. It is a situation whereby they have crashed out at the coast of Carthage, and Aeneas and his best friend Achates are wandering around doing a little bit of scouting. He has already run into his mother, who was disguised, Aeneas' mom, Venus, who was disguised as a huntress, and after she has told him about the area, Carthage and Dido and all of that sort of stuff, then she has enveloped them in a cloud so that they can wander about invisible and nobody would see them or harass them. So, immediately after meeting his mom, they, meanwhile, in Teria, snatched or grabbed the road, in other words, got going. Where, McQuad with a long A can be by with because of from, in, on, at, which, but it can also mean where, on which, like on which pathway. Where the scimitar, and that is a pathway, where the pathway shows Monstrat in the present. And now they were climbing a hill which very much, superlative plurimus, imminent overhangs the dative city, requiring a dative object, and watches the facing citadels from above. And so they have this vista of all of Carthage expanding out in front of them. Aeneas marvels, mirator, which comes from miror, a deponent verb, mirari, first conjugation, and miratus sum. And it, of course, means to be awestruck, to gape, be amazed, to wander, W-O-N-D-E-R. So Aeneas wanders at the mass. Once upon a time, huts, a Carthaginian word, so it's showing you that obviously the building of the city is coming along rather quickly. He marvels, indeed, not only at the mass, at the gates, and the hubbub, the noise, strepitum, and the layers of the roads. And so, of course, all of the aspects of the city that extends out in front of him. The burning Tyrians, the ardentes Tyrii, they press on, insto instare. And here we have then a series of what are known as historic infinitives, in which the action is so quick-paced that you want to not even take the time to conjugate the verb. It's really like one scene after the other that is described, these actions in quick succession. So part led the walls, and you translate the historic infinitive as a simple past. So part led the walls, and another historic infinitive, now a deponent verb, moli or moliri, and built the citadel, and rolled rocks, saxa, with their hands. Another part, pars, opted for a place for a house, literally a thing having been covered. It is the perfect passive participle of tego, tegere, texi, tectus, in that you're substantizing it, the thing having been covered, the house. So a place for house, and they encircled it, they surrounded it with a trench. And so this is kind of like a miniature moat, as it were. So we're looking at the actual physical aspects of the building of the city that is going on. And so now we're going to get some of the figurative aspects of city building or civilization building, if you would like. They choose, select, remember lego, legere, leg electus can mean to read, but can also mean to choose. So they choose their rights, their laws, and their magistrates, these are the governmental officials, and they choose a holy senate. And over here, heek, remember with a long I, heek is going to mean here. Some guys, and we have some, and then others. That's why we are translating correlatively. If they are by themselves, one ali only, then it would be others. So some dig the ports, fodiant, make a dig. And please note the difference between portus, a fourth declension, is a port where you park your ships, whereas a porta, which we saw previously, is first declension and gate. So a huge difference between the two. So here, some dig the ports. And over here, they locate, other guys do, they locate the deep foundations. Altusaum can mean high or deep. It goes in both directions of sea level. And the foundations, the deep foundations of a theater. And they cut out, excidunt, huge columns from the rocks, from the crags. And what are these columns? Well, here, decora is functioning merely as the appositive, renaming what those columns are. The decorations suited, obtusaum, it means suited, and it is an adjective that requires a dative object. So, for backdrops, the ones about to be, a future active participle. Now, in line 430, we then begin the bee simile. And the bee simile is a simile used by Virgil to truly describe the quick and the rather laborious, industrious, busy behavior, as a bee is often referred to as, of the Carthaginians in building their city. And please note that we had previously that we have a physical building of the civilization of Carthage. You had the figurative building in the forming of the government, and then we have the cultural building of the, of course, government and civilization of Carthage. So, Qualis is going to begin our, of course, simile, and it is modifying labor. So, just like labor, or what sort of labor? Either one. Works, exercises, the bees, accusative, in new summer, through the florid countrysides under the sun. And so therefore, this is what they are like, the Carthaginians, just like the labor works the bees. When the offsprings, nominative, plural, and it is our subject, fourth declension, when the offsprings lead out, and this is a specific time when, because we have an indicative verb with cum, when the offspring lead out the adults of the race, or when they pack together, stipo, stipare, that's where we get the word constipation, liquid honeys, and they swell up, distendunt, which is where we get the word distended, like often you see in famine photos of poor children who have distended stomachs, swollen stomachs due to the famine. Nevertheless, and they swell up the cells with ablative sweet nectar. Or they receive, accipiunt, the loads of the ones coming in, venientum. And so this would, of course, be substantized, the bees coming in, and it's in the genitive plural, or ablative absolute, with a battle line having been made, they ward off, archeo archere. That's the same verb that was used for Juno, doing that to the Trojans back in Book 1, and the very first few lines of Book 1. Well, this is Book 1, but I suppose at the very beginning of Book 1. Nevertheless, so they ward off, or with a battle line having been made, they ward off, they drive away the drones. Now, ignavum pecus, then, is another appositive. It's an apposition to the Philcos, telling us what they are. It renames it. And what are those drones? That lazy herd. And they drive them off from the, of course, stalls, kind of like a word that we use for a stall for a horse, but here it's the stalls, or the, the cells for the bees. The work, the opus, operis, it boils like a fever, and the fragrant honeys are redolent and give off a smell with time. And so he says, straight into a quote, Aeneas eit, O fortunate ones, talking directly to them, an apostrophe is what this is called when you address somebody or something that is not necessarily there. O fortunate ones, whose walls, or the walls of whom, now rise. He's showing a little bit of jealousy, wishing that it was he that was building the city, his city, the new Troy, that he is destined to found. Aeneas speaks, and he suspicates. He suspects, he looks upon with suspicion the rooftops, the fastigia, plural, neuter, of the city. And it is going to be then that he, still Aeneas as our subject here, having been enveloped, having been enclosed, perfect passive participle, with a cloud, he brings in himself, he, having been enveloped with a cloud, a miraculous thing to say. And so it is the supine. Here, the supine ends in U, which gives us an ablative of specification in what way the adjective is applicable. Miraculous in what way? Even saying it is going to be miraculous, the fact that he is enveloped, invisible in this cloud. So he brings in himself, enveloped by the cloud, brings in himself through the middles, and he mixes, present, because this is a second conjugation, miskeo miskere, he mixes with the men, and he is discerned, he is seen by not anyone. A dative of agent that you don't often see, because this is one of the naughty nine. Remember the naughty nine? The genitive is going to be ius, and the dative is going to be long I, as opposed to what it usually would be for the first and second declension. So, it's at this point, we are going to skip ahead to 494, but hope you use this and study and learn your lines, learn your words.